explanation why the final survey was quite different from the result, because there was another survey that apparently was much closer to the election day, and that was a bit more accurate. And katulad na nakita natin sa ibang surveys, up to a third, apparently not only up to a fifth of our voters decided on the election day or just before the election day. So that in itself perhaps explains some significant deviations that we have seen in the final survey. But speaking of the approval or trust rating of the president, I think we have seen already a downward spiral in his numbers for quite some time. And clearly we can see here na nung nagwatak-watak yung unity team, President BBM basically lost the Duterte base, right? In fact, it turned against him, while at the same time it looks like he has struggled to win over those who are non-aligned or belong to the more liberal or opposition, genuine opposition side. So that may explain why his numbers are like that. But in my opinion, what's even more surprising, or rather interesting, I would say, not surprising actually, is former President Rodrigo Duterte not only winning by a landslide in Davao, but also winning by a landslide in terms of trust rating among all top leaders in the country, even if everyone expects him to spend the rest of his life in the detention based on proper analysis of the legal cases against him. So I think that for me is even more interesting to look at. Former President Duterte having higher approval than both his daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte, and significantly more than the current president. So that for me is the interesting part.
Do you think those high approval ratings of former President Digong would actually impact, all the players from 2028 and how they go about their candidacies?
Well, I mean, obviously, what we see right now is yung resilience of the Duterte base. I think what happened was that the Duterte base went down to around 10, 15, or 20%. And then after the ICC arrest of former President Duterte, you had a full consolidation of the traditional sympathetic support base. And that was around 30 to 40% of the population. That was more or less the 16 million votes that Duterte won. And then, of course, over time, they had some gains here and there. And that may explain why Bongo and Bato was number two almost, right? Very close siya kay Bam Aquino. If you look at it, it perfectly makes sense that a significant plurality of our population has a huge support base. Now, if we were a parliamentary system, a la Germany or even a la Britain, they would have been already the leading political party. So even if they're not the majority, they're significant plurality. I would say that the Duterte base in a parliamentary system would have given them essentially the prerogative to form the government. So that tells you how strong that base is and how resilient that base is, and if anything, how crystallized that base has become since the arrest of former President Duterte. Obviously, the moment that President BBM made the decision to give a go-ahead signal to the ICC, I think it was a big mistake on his part to think that he could just, do it and then let's forget about it and move on and hope that the machinery of the state will carry the Alianza. Apparently, that's not what happened. He was already struggling with a lot of criticism of the so-called ayuda, of all the supposed, leveraging of the national budget for electioneering allegations coming from the liberal opposition. And then after the ICC warrant of arrest, I don't think the president made a very strong case to justify to the majority of Filipino people why the former president had to be taken to the ICC. Was there a significant effort to, for instance, shed light dun sa mga kwento ng mga biktima ng extrajudicial killings? Was there a return to the story of Kian de los Santos and thousands of others that we haven't heard enough about? I didn't see any follow through. I think the president wanted a soft landing, and he didn't get that soft landing because both the liberal opposition and the Duterte opposition were very, very trenchant in terms of their criticism of the president. And at the end of the day, that may explain the significant underperformance of the administration and the overperformance of many Duterte aligned and even liberal opposition aligned candidates.
And now it brings us to a cabinet revamp. Do you think this is enough to help the struggling numbers to get to recover some of that? And how can he, quote unquote, weaponize this revamp for sure?
Yeah, I mean, so okay, I was just listening to the to the press conference kanina, and my understanding is that there'll be more announcements soon. Pero ang problema ko dito is that this cabinet revamp, reboot, whatever you want to call it, it could come off as performative or theatrics if basically there's no significant change in the core members of the cabinet. I mean, if the president's argument is we underperform in midterm elections dahil ang concern ng tao ay, I don't know, welfare issue, gut issue, food issue, then how come his economic managers are still the same, right? You would have imagined naturally there would be some changes in departments of, I don't know, national development, NEDA, formerly NEDA, or finance, or even agriculture for that matter, which perfectly makes sense, right? Because kamusta yung 20 peso kada kilo, di ba? Aside from the pilot project they did in Visayas. So my sense is if he's gonna keep his core economic managers and the ones that he's gonna change are like Department of Foreign Affairs, I'm not sure how that is exactly responding to the problem that he supposedly identified for the underperformance of his administration. I kind of disagree with his reading of the situation. I think his the reading of situation is that he had a weak campaign strategy. I think his team didn't do enough to defend the administration or themselves, and I think he didn't do enough to defend himself from the criticism from both sides. But if his reading is, ang tao ay ayon na sa amin or bumaba yung trust rating sa amin dahil hindi kami nagpa-perform dun sa fundamental welfare issue and then hindi mo papalitan yung core economic managers mo, then I don't see the connect. I mean, I can see why the new DFA secretary is Testazo because she has an Asia hand and she's the perfect person to deal with ASEAN chairmanship of the Philippines next year, to deal with probably Xi Jinping coming to the Philippines next year. Yes, I get that, but I don't know how that makes sense in the context of the problem the president has supposedly identified. So let's see if in the coming days there will be a significant change in the relevant departments as far as welfare issues and other key issues for the Filipino people is concerned.
Okay, well, Richard, what about this move by DILG Secretary John Remulla asking the ICC for an approval to bring home the former president for his oath taking? Is this a sign of him just, trying to magpakita gilas because he will be replaced as a cabinet secretary? Or is this connected to the reconciliation efforts of Malacanang, the president?
Well, I mean, this was basically a recognition of the endurance of President Duterte's support base. Basically, I mean, in Davao, it was a complete landslide for the president, and all the Dutertes did fantastic. I mean, even Rodrigo Duterte the second topped the council, and Paulo Duterte, Polong, and Baste, all of them did fantastic in Davao. So I think this is basically a concession and basically recognition that hindi namin maibalik na si Duterte sa Pilipinas. Medyo, I think, hindi, that's not how it works with ICC. But siguro we can symbolically at least recognize the support and authority still enjoys back in Davao, if not across the country. But then again, I mean, if the messaging of the president is reconciliation, and then this is the most they want to offer, I don't know, because clearly, Senator Bongo, I think also Senator Bato, to a certain degree, said we need more significant gestures, sincere, extreme sincere gestures, if you really want reconciliation. Kaya nga, just to be clear, I sarcastically or half jokingly said, why not rehire Sara Duterte in your cabinet, right? If you're gonna revamp it, right? I think she wanted DND before, or get some more Duterte aligned people into your cabinet. If reconciliation is your messaging, but if that's not gonna happen, and then the revamp is not really gonna touch the core cabinet positions that are relevant to the issues that are relevant to the Filipino voters, then this is gonna be more theatrics and performativity than substantive revamp.
A Digong ally in the cabinet. Let's see if that will happen for the announcement this previous Wednesday. Thank you for talking to us, geopolitical analyst Richard Digong.
Thank you very much.
We're going to pause for another quick breather, but right after that,
Salamat guys. Quickly lang, sorry lang, hi lang ako sa inyo. By the way, just to follow up on this. Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I was joking nung sabi ko, rehire na lang nila si Sara Duterte, but mukhang hindi nag-gets ng tao yung sarcasm na. Anyways, tomorrow we're hoping to have Kristan and Mark Gombo with us para pag-usapan natin well, their experience, basically, their learnings from the campaign and what they expect moving forward. And then dito yung mga latest na development sa ating politika. We hope to also have Attorney Cristina Conti, Dr. Ronald Holmes, and a couple of other interesting people with us again in the coming days. So pasensya na if tonight I just let you guys to eavesdrop here. But just to say something on this, so now, nung nakita natin yung huling survey, this is exactly what I was saying, di ba? Nung yung survey na minimension ko na consumer sentiment, April pa lang nakita ko na sinasabi ng mga voters na sa election day mismo silang di-decide, up to a fifth. Apparently, ang lumabas dito up to a third. So ang dami palang last minute bumoto kay Bam and Kiko. So that may explain At kasi nakita natin sa mga sample ballots, sinama si Bam at Kiko eh. So, that may explain the significant difference from the late April surveys and the May 12 basically numbers that came out. So again, I think instead of us just dismissing all surveys and say it's a joke, I think we have to try to find logical explanation because all your alternative is what? Kwentong Barbero, Marites, Google Trends. It's not gonna work, right? Anecdotal evidence, it's not much of it doesn't give you some big picture analysis. So you still need proper analytics and we still have to analyze bakit may mga deviations na ganun. But having said that, I do believe itong latest survey ng Pulse Asia which shows that President Duterte has a lot of trust rating. I mean, obviously, in theory, parang why are we even asking if people have trust in Digong? I mean, it's not like he's coming back anytime soon and it's not like he's in position of power, right? So to begin with, minsan kina-question ko, translating in Sara in terms of what? Ano bang ginagawa ni Sara so far, di ba? Last time we checked, wala na siyang cabinet position, wala siyang portfolio. So kung titignan mo dun sa tatlong tao, whether it's Marcos, Sara, and Digong, yung mas mataas or yung mga significant mas mataas, yung mga tao na actually walang responsibilidad last time I checked. Duterte is in detention, probably for the foreseeable future. Sara Duterte, basically walang portfolio. I don't know anong ginagawa niya. And yet, mas mataas yung trust rating na, right? So, minsan you have to interrogate, like, trust in terms of what, right? Like, feel mo lang siya, gusto mo lang siya. So, clearly kay Digong, you can say, yeah, baka doon na naman yung sympathy factor or affective connection, right? Kay Sara Duterte is more or less the same except a downgraded version of Digong. And then kay BBM, because he actually has an actual job as the commander-in-chief and as your chief executive, he's gonna get all the blame for everything that has gone wrong for everything. So in short, ako, para sa akin, instead of being dismissive about all the surveys and all, I think we have to take it seriously. Because the numbers actually explain why Bongo got close to 50% of the votes, why Bato was almost number 2, why Mark Oleta made it, why Jimmy Bondoc was top 20, why Philip Salvador was also top 20, right? So I think hindi healthy yung approach ng mga ibang kaibigan natin and to just blanketly, I mean, like categorically dismiss all the surveys or sabihin nila na joke time lang yan. Now, para sa akin, once again, nakikita natin na across these socioeconomic classes yan. Again, A, B, C, D, E. Ito yung pinaka talagang mga kapatid natin na marginalized, rural poor, yung talagang mga kaibigan natin na in the most impoverished, talagang marginalized sectors ng ating bayan. And then yung D, ito yung quote-unquote masa, working class. There's D1, D2, D1, ito yung mga kababayan natin na meron at least property or may lupa or may titulo versus D2 ng working class na walang lupa or basically nagre-rent lang sila. So, and then C is basically us, right? Middle class. Because yung A and B ay nasa gated communities, nasa Forbes and Dasmariñas mga yan. Hindi kasama sa survey yan and they're so statistically irrelevant. Like what? 1% of the population. So it's basically C. And then if you look at the numbers, A, B, C, 57% ay nag-express ng trust kay Digong. So this is what I'm saying, guys. Actually, ang problema natin dito is not, eto mga voters na to ay hindi ganyan, kawawa naman tayo. Actually, hindi. Lahat ng socioeconomic classes natin ay may problema tayo kung ang tao, kung ang karamihan ng ating mga kababayan na middle class who supposedly have had the chance to have the best education, have had the chance to go all around the world and all, na majority sa kanila ay naniniwala, may tiwala kay Digong after everything, then may problema talaga tayo. We have a fundamental problem. We really have a serious problem here. And sabi ko nga, kumbaga nag-underperform rin si BBM because wala naman effort din yung administration nila para explain nila. They could have DDS the DDS basically. Like, bago nyo kaming atakin dun sa issue ng ayuda, sige, pag-usapan natin, di ba? Parang Cynthia style. Bakit? Kayo nga, Farmali, ganyan-ganyan. Ilan sa mga kandidato sa alyansa ay umatake dun sa issue ng Farmali? Halos wala. Si BBM lang dun sa lawak speech niya. And then if you go naman dun sa EJK issue, ilan sa mga kandidato made the extrajudicial killing a central theme? Not even Bam and Kiko. Last time I checked, they didn't also make the EJK issue central to the... So, basically, the DDS camp got away with it, right? So, kaya we cannot also blame why karamihan natin mga kababayan, para sa kanila, hindi pa rin masyadong klaro bakit kailangan padalhin si Digong sa ICC. So, nagkulang tayong lahat. Whether sa education system, whether sa media, whether yung administrasyon, whether yung mga lumalaban para sa karapatan pang tao, they're not doing what they are supposed to do because hindi nakikita ng taong bayan eh. I mean, you can always make this argument na meron tayong moral educational crisis, gets. Pero at the same time, like, guys, honestly, ilan ang documentary yung nakita niyo ukol sa mga biktima ng extrajudicial killings? Na nakita niyo talaga yung buhay nila, yung talagang the injustice of it, paano kinota-kota lang sila. Aside from Kian de los Santos, honestly, the only documentary I saw are like international documentaries. Yung media natin mismo, walang masyadong yung hindi natin na-humanize, di ba? And then dun sa issue ng ayuda, I think there was not much effort. Kaya nga nung sinasabi ng mga kaibigan natin na worst budget ever, the reason na nainis ako ng konti, sabi ko, tama naman na mag-criticize kayo. Pero pag sasabihin yung worst budget ever, you're just giving ammunition to the Duterte side to get away with yung mga skandalo na meron sila nung panahon nila. Yung formally pa lang di ba? Ang dami natin pwedeng pag-usapan. O, di ba? Yung mga pandemic time, Diyos ko kung ano na nangyari, di ba? So, basically, perfect storm to Perfect storm. Bugbog sarado si BBM from both sides. And then ngayon, instead of BBM accepting na nagkulang siya sa communication, nagkulang yung alyansa campaign strategy nila, nagkulang yung mga bata niya in terms of defending the administration or position niya, biglang ang position nila is, sige, let's just try to show something na we're responding. Pero kung purong cabinet member mo lang napapalitan, wala namang kinalaman dun sa gut issues. I mean, kung galit ang tao sa issue ng corruption, then look at the relevant departments na pwede mong gawin, di ba? I mean, just to be, hindi naman Machiavellian, pero, di ba? I mean, just connect the dots, di ba? Kung sa tingin mo, ang basa mo is galit ang tao dahil sa tingin nila palpak yung food security natin, then you know which department to go after, right? Kung ang tingin ng tao, yung PhilHealth Fund, hindi tama yung nilipat nila dun sa kabila, and then alam natin anong department ang dapat, di ba? Panagutan natin, di ba? Wala ang pinalitan so far is DFA, tapos yung DOA, pumalit lang na Department of Environment, like, okay, and then so, di ba? And then hindi ko pa nga alam nangyari kay Menardo Guevara, is he still there? Di ba? And then sasabihin mo reconciliation, wala ka namang in-offer na DDS sa cabinet mo, kaya nga nag-joke ako Kunin mo na lang si Sara para tapos na, love na kayo, para Unit Team 2.0, tapos ng usapan, wala na tayong drama, di ba? So, I'm just saying, ayan na naman I mean like, first of all, I don't agree dun sa analysis ni BBM sa underperformance ng team niya. I think hindi niya na-recognize na kulang talaga sila sa communications and tactics. But yung other thing is, hindi totoo na mga voters ay bumoto lang ukol lang sa mga gut issues. Bakit Bato did so well? Si Bato, purong ICC ang pinag-usapan niya. Purong pinag-usapan niya yung war on drugs. Purong pinag-usapan niya law and order. Lahat ng mga DDS ay umakyat sa mga rankings ng significant after the ICC issue. So clearly, may kinalaman sa politika yan. Hindi naman, last time I checked, it's not like Jimmy Bondoc and Philip Salvador and all were talking about food security and healthcare all the time. Even with Bongo, I mean, he was already doing well for a long time. Yes, there's a malasakit factor. But even Bongo also talk about Tatay Digong and ICC and all that. So, ako lang I see so many disconnect. Ang daming mga gaps na nakikita ko dito in terms of analysis, political response, and what could happen next. Kaya sabi ko, as things stand, you're gonna bet on Duterte return. Unless mag-split sila, sinong pwede maglaban sa loob ng kampo nila. But let's also watch what's gonna happen on the trial issue. So far, hindi rin napalitan yung Speaker of the House. Martin Romualdez has more than 280 votes, so he's gonna still stay there. So, basically, naghanash lang si BBM na, pero basically, the same yung cabinet niya, the same yung mga allies niya. So, I don't know guys, there's a disconnect there. But interestingly, nung tinanong natin sa tao, anong basa nyo sa ginagawa ni BBM, just to be fair, it looks like karamihan ng ating mga kababayan, or at least yung mga nagfo-follow sa atin, ay sinabi nila, only time will tell. So, let's see. So, I don't want to be also, baka magalit yung mga kabilang, mga kaibigan natin na loyalist. Okay, maybe there's a wisdom down the road, but I'm just saying, I think we should accept what went wrong first dun sa election, kaya nag-underperform and sobrang nag-overperform si Marcoleta almost number 2 si Bato, hindi nga siya pasok sa mga Magic 12 pa nga almost dun sa mga ibang service early this year. Si Aimee nga, almost labas na siya, nakahabol pa, di ba? Si Camille pa, nakapasok pa, di ba? And then, ang daming alyansa na in-expect mo na makapasok, hindi nakapasok. Galit na nga si Bong Revilla yata, habulin niya yung mga nag-ano sa kanya, di ba? Nang bully daw sa kanya. Anyway, all I'm saying is that you cannot solve a problem if you don't properly identify the problem, the source of the problem, number one. And number two, you don't properly respond to that source of the problem, number two. Right? At kung performative lang ang mangyari dito, then I'm not sure you're gonna see a significant improvement in the number of BBM. And BBM is gonna risk becoming a lame duck. I mean, as early as now, nakikita mo yung mga centrist trapo and all, lalo sa Senado, may mga iba na nga. I mean, basically, you look at the position of Jinggoy and even si Cheese and all, basically sinasabi lang, mag-reconcile na kayo para wala na pa. Focus na lang tayo sa welfare issues. And of course, mag-focus dapat tayo sa welfare issues. Pero, hindi naman ibig sabihin na kalimutan na natin ng rule of law. Kaya nga dapat di ba? Dapat may accountability tayo. Dapat may rule of law tayo. Hindi naman popularity contest sa mga bagay-bagay And sometimes you have to go through some difficult political process so that you bring about rule of law and justice. You think rule of law just happens like that? Kung may mali talaga nangyari, kung may piatos, pati nga si Chel Jokno Marian Rivera, dinamay dun sa Miggy Mango, kung may kalokohan talaga nangyari, dapat may accountability on that. Hindi pwede sabihin na, hindi, focus na lang tayo sa Well, senators have 24 hours a day or at least, I don't know, how many hours do they work a day? You can do the welfare issues. Hindi naman mutually exclusive yan But then again, can I blame them? If BBM himself is throwing a wet blanket on this whole thing, obviously, for him it makes sense because he wants to distance himself and, at least respect the separation of powers. But you're also empowering itong mga centrists, let's just put it nicely, ng mga traditional politicians who are basically saying, huwag na tayo mag-trial or mag-trial tayo, Mickey Mouse na lang para matapos na kaagad. Buya ka siya. Di ba? So that's what I'm saying, guys if you're gonna make big statements on reconciliation, cabinet revamp, then do big things. But if you make big statements and then walang follow-through, magbabackfire ulit yan. Better na nga sana he just said, yeah, we had a setback but not significant. We still won half of the Senate seats. We won supermajority tayo ulit sa Kongreso. Yung mga aliado natin, kaya Speaker Martin Romualdez is keeping his position. Karamihan ng gobernadorial, mayoral position, nanalo na tayo. Hindi rin yan ang sinabi niya. Kaya nga, honestly, there's a disconnect there. There's definitely a disconnect there. I'll leave it na lang kay Sir Ronald later para ibabash niya na yung mga kailangan i-bash. But you can see where I'm coming from. Kaya, ay nako, malabo to guys, malabo to. Kaya talagang, sabi ko, Duterte comeback is not impossible. We saw that with the MAGA movement and Trump. Again, sorry sa mga kamaga natin dyan. I know from your world is different because, Trump is blonde and, okay, whatever. But beyond the superficial differences, I'm talking about yung base, diba? Populist base. On that note, thank you very much guys. Balikan natin itong issue na ito soon. Marami tayong pag-usapan, marami tayong mga kaibigan na kausapin. Again, also thank you so much sa lahat ng mga sumusuporta sa atin sa different platforms. Don't forget to follow us also on different platforms and also on Deep Dive, Richard Hidarin sa ating podcast. And thank you so much again sa lahat ng mga defenders natin against all those haters and all of that na medyo hindi na gets yung konteksto ng ginagawa natin. So, anyway, thank you so much guys. By the way, the 7th season ng ating The View from Manila will be also launched soon. So I'm trying to put some good guests also together for that. Hopefully. Oh, by the way, Percy Sandanya from Akbayan, we're also hoping to have Congressman Percy later this week. Pabalik sila, God willing, safely from atin to yung West Philippine Sea Civil Society event. And pag-usapan natin what is next for Akbayan, for Chel Jokno, for Leila De Lima. So anyway, we hope to also probably have them also on my TV show. So doon sa mga kaibigan natin, let's not forget, ewan ko doon sa iba. Tayo kasi, ito yung vlog natin. If you want the serious side of us, straight, arrow version of us, check View from Manila at saka yung ibang TV interviews natin among others. But if you're following us here on our vlogs, medyo freestyle tayo dito. Alright? Yung iba kasi, yun na yung nila, yun na yung platform nila So talagang siseryosoin nila. Tayo kasi, we have compartmentalized tayo So we try to have a multi-fires communication strategy here. So when I give advice on communications, because I do that in my own world, I have a multi-fires communications. Yes, of course, yung mga trolls and all will try to twist my words, Diyos ko, kahit Human Development Index lang. Buti nga, hindi tinanong sa akin yung travel advisory ng US sa, may gagawa na naman ng issue ng mga trolls yan. But anyway, my point is, in my own personal, yeah, I walk the talk, di ba? I also have my own multi-fires communication strategy. So you want a serious version, there's an international version, there's the national version. You have to, kumbaga, variegated, stratified communication strategy because we are in a very spontaneous world. Yung mga old style communication strategy will not work anymore. And ang basically, ang katapat mo dito, guys, is yan, yung mga trolls, basically lowlifes, bayaran, and bardagulan. So in that world, you have to be dynamic. You have to be absolutely dynamic. God bless, and